And then I will welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for organizing your printed photos with Bonnie Shay. My name is Sydney Clark. I'm one of the librarians over at the Northfield Library, and we're thrilled that you guys could join us this afternoon. We have a ton of great programming this summer. Obviously, lectures like this, we're doing things in the studio, not to mention summer reading, which is not just for kids. So please, if you have not already started your reading or joined, feel free to check out our website, stop by one of the buildings, or see us out and about town in the community this summer. I'll be at Market and Music in Northfield tomorrow night, and we will be marching in the Winnetka 4th of July parade on Monday. So please stop by and say hi. Getting over to our program today, I had the pleasure of seeing Bonnie give a presentation. I can't even remember, it was during COVID, but I have no recollection of time. But she did a wonderful program over at the Wilmette Library on Zoom, similar to this one. And I just loved her approach and thought her tips were so practical. So I'm super excited to be able to have her with us today. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Bonnie and let her get started. Thanks for coming.
Absolutely. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. And let me just get one thing for myself. All right, hold on. I'll get back to sharing, but my notes happen to disappear. Isn't that what happens? Here we go. They're back. Okay. I always say technology is our friend, and then sometimes it just decides to do something that you weren't expecting, and you just play with it and it comes back to what you want to do. All right, everybody. Awesome. Well, thank you to Sydney, first of all, for inviting me to present for the Winnetka-Northfield Library System. I have to share with you that my very first public speaking presentation was at the Highland Park Library. So I have a special affection to all libraries because as a kid, I loved libraries. And then as someone who I can share my tips and techniques and expertise, I love it. It's a wonderful place. So I'm glad you are all here, and I'm glad to be sharing my expertise with you on a very important topic. So I just want to set the stage for my presentation. And if you were forced to leave your house in an emergency, would it be safe to say that after you collected your family members, other loved ones, and your pets, would you want to reach for your photos to take them with you? I can't see you, but I'm guessing you're all saying, yeah, yes. So to me, that explains why I do what I do. Photos represent your life story, and you want them to be available to enjoy and not at risk of being damaged or lost. And printed photos, as you know, are at the top risk category for that. And there seem to be more and more natural disasters happening these days, so we want to be prepared. To me, I see photos providing you enjoyment in 3 different ways. So photos link you, first of all, to your prior generations as you view your parents' photos collections. Then you might browse through your own photos to recall fun times and major life events. And then photos are a part of your legacy that you will leave for your kids and grandkids or other relatives. So to me, it makes sense that we treasure our photos and feel sad if we're not currently enjoying them. Maybe they are hiding in boxes in a closet, or they're spread out all over your house. And because there are so many, you feel stuck and overwhelmed. So I'm dedicated to helping people tell their photographic story while it is still possible to do so. Too many people have realized after their parents have passed away that they didn't know who some of the people were in the photos or the story behind the photos. So let's talk about how you can tell your story through your family's photographs, and that is why I'm so glad you are here. I imagine there might be 3 potential challenges that you may have. First of all, do you have a mountain of loose photos that you just never did anything with? and now you're overwhelmed trying to figure out what to do with them. Maybe over the years, you did put your photos into albums that are now sitting on a shelf and haven't been looked at in a long time. And maybe sooner or later, you're going to move to a different home that maybe has less space, and you won't have the room to store all of these albums. And then lastly, maybe you inherited your parents' or grandparents' photo collection, and you're just not sure how to preserve and share the photos with other family members, especially when you don't know who many of the people are in the photos. Well, whatever your photo challenge you're faced with, this is maybe how you are feeling. The good news is that you're here today, and by the end of my presentation, you'll have a series of practical steps and techniques to take care of your printed photos. So let's fasten our seatbelts, and here we go. My general format is I'll speak for about 45 minutes with my prepared presentation, and we'll leave time at the end for your questions. So either take notes while you're listening and jot down your notes, or if you'd like, you can put them right in the chat section. And Sydney's going to be my buddy at the end and be reading questions and curating them so that we answer them for all of you. And I'm guessing there will be some very similar questions, but any question you have, please share, because we can all learn from each other. And my plan for my presentation is I want to inspire you to curate your photos, because your family collection is priceless and precious, and we want to make sure that your legacy for your children and grandchildren, besides enjoying it yourself in the present, is accomplished. I'm also going to give you ideas of how to get started, since the first step is often the hardest if you are totally stuck and overwhelmed. And then I'll also show you some fun ways to tell your story once your collection is sort of under control. After the presentations, Sydney will be emailing you a handout called the Top 12 Ways to Organize Your Family Photo Collection, which includes ideas beyond today's presentation, especially a few suggestions on digital photos. I'm not addressing digital photos because that could be its own topic, but at least we'll give you a few tidbits that might be helpful. And then she'll also include a link to my website, because I do a monthly digital newsletter, and people just tell me that they love getting a monthly reminder of new things, old things, things they've heard before, but maybe they need to hear it one more time, and they'll get it and put it into play. So voluntary, obviously, we're not going to subscribe you, you'll do it yourself. And then she'll share a recording link for this, because maybe you'll want to watch it again as you're going through your process. Okay, now let's going to jump into my 6-step process. Step number 1 is to gather all your photos together, because I imagine probably you don't know how many photos you have, because they're in a lot of different hiding places, especially if you've lived in your home for quite a few years. So step 1 is to centralize them all together, whether they're loose or in albums, slides, negatives, I mean, any media in the photographic world, let's pull them together so that you can have a place to see them and get a better sense. Because I find, everybody, that sometimes the project that you just don't start grows in your mind because you haven't started it and you haven't looked at those photos in a long time. So to me, it's really a gift to yourself. Let's pull them all together, and then you have a general sense of what you have, and it's maybe less overwhelming because it's not as big as you thought, maybe. I would suggest that hopefully you have a spare room, a table, a closet, or such where you can collect all your photos and keep them. Because if you've accumulated photos over the course of your lifetime, it's going to take not another lifetime, but it's going to take some time to accomplish what you want to. And it's much easier and less challenging to have a place to dedicate for a photo area, so that you don't have to clean up every time you work and put them away, and then you have to bring them out all over again. So if that's possible, I highly suggest it. But here's a sample of what your collection might look like. And I'm telling you, it doesn't have to be pretty. It's your collection, and you're going to give it some love and attention that maybe you haven't in a while, but it may just be a jumble of all sorts of stuff, different sizes, envelopes, your kids' class photos, you name it. It's quite a gathering. So that's a possible look for one collection. Number 2 is I'd like to give you a list of some tools to gather. So I want you to have the tools to accomplish what I'm going to suggest you do. So here's a view of some of them. So photo safe pencils I find are really helpful because if you want to write on the back of a photo some information, we don't want to use pens or Sharpie markers because that could either bleed onto the picture or make it less visible. So photo safe pencils. They're basically soft pencils. You can Google them, you'll find them easily. Sticky notes could be your good friend because they're a way to put some information on a photo or a grouping of a photo, and you can just sort of put it on and it's not going to harm the photo when you take it off. So it's really helpful. And large index cards are my friend, and I'll show you a couple ways how we use them, but these are the biggest ones, 5 by 8, they're about this big. And I do the colorful ones because they're once again a way to organize and have a filing system that we'll talk about. And then last but not least, some sorting bins. And they don't have to be fancy, they don't have to match, they don't have to be archival. Think of them as a sorting and a storage mechanism for now while you're working on the photos. At the end, I'll give you some good ideas, but just look around your house. You might have some shoe boxes you can take some shoes out of, or some boxes that you got delivery yesterday in the mail. So just whatever works for you. Don't worry about going out and shopping for some boxes. Use what you have. And yeah, and like I already said, please dedicate a space if you can in your space so that you don't have to put them away and then bring them out again when you want to work each time. So the big step at this point now, you've gathered them all together, you have your tools, you have a place to work on it, and it could be your dining room table, you know, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. We want to sort your photos. And I find as human beings, we like to have our stories told in a chronological order. So from the day you were born, as you grew up, when your kids were born, and as they grow up. And it's a master sorting system, right? You can't mess with it. It's chronology. So to me, your general guiding will be chronology. Possibly some of your photos are in chronological order and some aren't. So we're going to sort of build a filing system to get them all in a general sense. But I want to set your expectations. I'm not expecting you to get them to the exact day each photo was taken, but a general flow. So even if you can get it into the decade or a year would be ideal to see your story flow. And we're going to get a filing system together. So just like you have, let's say you had a filing system sitting next to you if you're sitting at a desk and has all your paperwork filed by hanging folders and interior folders. Well, that's what we're sort of going to create with your photos, a filing system in chronological order. So that's why we have some sorting boxes available. What I do want to mention to you is if you get a bunch of photos, and it might be a whole roll of photos in an envelope, you're like, I have no idea who's in them, where it was, when it was. I have nothing. I'm stumped. I have no idea. Just put them aside and work on the stuff that you do have some information on. And believe it or not, by the end, you oftentimes, oh, I know where that is. That was so-and-so. Or, oh, here's the red dress. I'm seeing the red dress again. Let's put them together. So think of yourself as playing a detective. That's what I do with my clients all the time. We sometimes have helpful information and sometimes just a picture. And we have to look at it and look for all sorts of clues. So think of it as sorting into a chronological order, and be mindful that if you have a lifetime of photos, you're not going to do this overnight and you're not going to sort them all in one session. So get your calendar out and sort of plan when you're going to do it and just do it and chip away at it. That's the idea. So sorting your photos in chronological order. I will mention, everybody, the one exception to the chronological order that I would like to give you is, let's say you have 3 kids and you have all their class photos that you ordered every year from kindergarten through high school. And they're photos. Maybe they don't evoke emotion, but they sort of tell your kid's story through school. I would say build a folder with each kid's name on it and put each kid's name in that folder. Don't try to put them in exact chronological order. You will by child, but that's sort of the one exception that I'd rather have it by topic, by kid, class photos, than by trying to put them in the, because to me, they're their own little grouping. And at the end, you can see all your kids' photos from kindergarten to high school. It's sort of a pretty cool progression. Okay, here's the sample filing system. So as you can see, I have these index cards. They happen to be white this time, but I've been using color because they're easier to find. And I just put the year on it. As I find pictures, okay, 1975, okay, 1995. And I have this building system. And as you can see, there are some photos there that are loose and some that are in envelopes. So you're putting them together as you have them. So that's what it looks like. Okay, so let's pretend you've collected your photos and you've done a general sort. You have this filing system that it's in a general chronological order. And then maybe you have a few, a half a box or a part of a box that you just don't know when they were, and that's fine. They stumped you, but that is fine. So now let's put your editing hat on, and let's say we need to edit them, because if you have, let's say, 5,000 photos, 10,000 photos, we want to narrow down and get it to the quality, not quantity, that's more manageable. So I'm going to give you a bunch of rules of thumb of how to edit. And I suggest that you edit because even if we could wave a magic wand over your photos and have them all done, it would still be more than you can manage or want to manage. And I believe your story would be diluted, because to me, we want the best of the best ultimately to tell your story. Not all 60 photos of your first birthday party, maybe 10, maybe 12 that tell the story. So I want to get you to a less overwhelming place, not a repeat overwhelming place. So let's go over some decision-making tips that I think will be helpful. Number one is remove duplicates. I can't see you, but I'm going to sort of theoretically ask you to raise your hand if back in the film days, how many of us got an extra set of prints back when they were free or 99 cents a roll? We thought we were, okay, I see some hands. We thought we were doing ourselves a gift, right? Wow, yeah, we can send them out. Well, now it's sort of getting in our way because there's more photos that we have to deal with. So let's remove exact duplicates. And you can either let them go, meaning discard, or maybe you have people that you want to share that with. Like maybe there's a good friend from grade school that you find a picture of and you have an extra. Make it a postcard and mail it to that friend. Why not? It's sort of a fun blast from the past. So, a surprise to get a photo in the mail instead of a bill or junk mail would be fun. But let's take them out of your collection that you're going to be moving forward with. That's the bottom line. Number two is let's identify redundant photos, so redundant content. So for instance, let's say at Thanksgiving, you had 12 people at your Thanksgiving dinner. And so you had to take back in the film days several pictures of that grouping because you wanted to get a good one. Today, we can check our phone and say, oh yeah, I got a good one, we're done. Not back in the film days. So if you have 10 photos of the same grouping, let's pick the best one or two, depending on if everybody's eyes were open. And we can remove redundant content that really dilutes the story, like I mentioned, rather than helping you. So keep one and let go of the rest. Edit out poor quality. So I have an analogy that might help you because maybe you've never done a photo collection together. That's why you're here. But who gets their mail from the mailbox and goes and stands over the recycling bin as they go through it? And they can decide recycle, recycle, recycle. Oh, keep, recycle, recycle, keep. That's an editing process for your mail. So we're sort of doing the same idea with quality over quantity with your photos. And we want to edit out the poor quality, not really recycle, discard, but it's the similar idea that you already know how to do, and we're just going to apply it to your photos. So what do I mean about poor quality photos? Well, people's eyes are all closed. It's blurry, unflattering, poorly composed, especially sometimes when a kid got a hold of the camera, they weren't real great at getting everything in the frame. And so it's not a great quality photo. So let it go. We want to make room for the real winners and let go of the ones that are not such winners. Some of you might feel throwing away a picture of Aunt Susie or Grandma Lucy is sacrilegious. If I can give you a positive spin on that, by letting go of poor quality photos or duplicates, you're letting the good ones rise to the top and tell your story, and each one has a nugget to tell. And so it's more manageable. You're not going to dilute your story, and it's just more concrete. So consider them sort of junk photos, like junk mail would be helpful. Once again, that was the analogy. And when we talk about scanning a little bit later in my presentation, I'll show you what a couple poor quality photos that might look like, but that we can actually save them. So you'll have some really good insight into what really is a poor quality photo. All right, so we've gathered our photos, we've put them in chronological order, by sorting them. We've removed duplicates and poor quality, and now we're ultimately at the last stop before we do the scanning, and we want to choose the best of the best. So you're sort of doing your last pass, your last edit, so that we keep the best. So like I said, for a birthday party or Thanksgiving or any family gathering or trip, we want to narrow it down to the best to tell your story. Let me mention, if you have some travel photos, let's say you had the fortune to go to Paris and you have a picture of the Eiffel Tower. Well, we can Google for a picture of the Eiffel Tower anytime we want. So I'd say let go of that. But if you're standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, that's a keeper. So scenery in general, I view as pretty much, unless you're an artistic photographer and that's part of your collection in your portfolio, where it just gives you joy actually taking the pictures. But I would say scenery in general, unless there's somebody in it, is really, you can let it go. The exception is if you want to sort of establish where you are, that sort of tells you obviously where you are. Like let's say you were in Amsterdam and let's take a picture of the canals and the boats going down so that you know where you were. That's okay, but we don't need 30 photos of scenery that, you know, your eyes will glaze over when you keep looking over and over again. So just enough to tell the story. So after you complete the step, you now have the best of the best. So let me give you a visual so that you see what it might look like. This is the filing system, narrowed down, and this is a client of mine, and my clients have large collections, so this is quite a few. But this is what it looks like where we pick the best of the best from, you know, year A to year Z, whatever years we collected. So, this is what it might look like. And I'm repeating my story, but I want to emphasize quality over quantity. I can't say it enough because I think it'll help you let go of photos and keep the quality for your collection and for your story. So now it's time to scan the photos. And scanning is quite beneficial, and I'll show you quite some wonderful results, magic in my mind. But scanning is a great next step because you can scan them and now you can share them with anybody. You don't have to just have one print and say, well, who do I give this one print? Your 3 kids are in it. Which kid do I give this picture to? Well, you don't have to decide anymore because we scanned it, or we're going to scan it, and you can give each child a copy of that. So they're shareable, and then you can use them just like any digital photo that you take today or tomorrow. You can text it, you can email it, you can even print it. And let me share with you, and I'll share you some visuals in a little bit, but scanning is magic and technology is on our side. So I imagine quite a few of you have pictures that are yellow with age. They're too pink, they're too blue, they're faded, they're too dark. The scanning really just standard scanning. This where I go to have pictures scanned. It's just part of the package. It's what you get. It's not like they've photoshopped every single thing. It's this part of the scanning process. And the pictures are generally brought back to pretty much their original color. If a picture is blurry, scanning can't help it. It can't crisp it up and all of a sudden it's in focus. That's the one exception. But coloration, and if it's slightly too dark or slightly too light, it really works miracles. And then to me, the big gift of this whole process of scanning is that now you have a backup of your photos. So if anything happens to those printed photos for any reason, they're lost, they're flooded, whatever, you have a backup. You have them, you have your memories, you have your photographic story. So it's all really, really, really helpful once you get into the scanning. So in my mind, there's sort of 2 different ways that you can scan. One is you actually do it yourself, or you outsource it to somebody else who does scanning. I've known quite a few people that have tried to do the scanning themselves, and I'm not discouraging you completely, but I just want to be very realistic that scanning is very laborious. And if you don't have good quality scanners, they're really slow and you don't get good results at the end. So I'm just giving you a realistic picture because it is what it is. Technology is sort of hard to have the highest quality scanning unless you want to have a professional grade scanner. So I highly suggest that you outsource it. And luckily, I'm guessing since you are all part of the Winnetka-Northfield Library System, that you're in the Chicago area, that we have many places that will do scanning for you. Because what I definitely would like you to remember is do not ship your photos anywhere to be scanned. Because to me, that's putting them at risk right at day one if something happens to your package via, however it's getting shipped. So we're lucky living in the Chicago area that we have lots of scanning companies and that you can use a local company. What I would suggest is that when you do bring it into a local company, make sure they really scan it right under the roof. I'm not going to mention any names, but there was once a series of chain stores that you would bring your photos into the store and ask them to be scanned, but they'd actually end up shipping them elsewhere. So just make sure that under the roof that you're walking into of that store, they will actually do the scanning for you, so that there's no additional risk on your photo collection. So here's some magic. How many of you maybe have photos that look like this? They're faded, they're discolored, they're a little grainy. They just, Well, I'm going to show you some magic the next slide. Here we go. Isn't that magic? The before picture, and you're seeing the after picture. And like I already mentioned, this is standard high quality scanning. It's not like anybody, painstakingly retouched and photoshopped this picture. This is what happens. Magic. It's miracles, but I never get tired of seeing these results because they're fabulous. So this is what I mentioned earlier about there might be some poor quality photos in your collection that part of you might be saying, oh, well, this was terrible. I don't look good or it doesn't look good. Let it go. But I want to give you a visual for how it may be just fine once it gets scanned. And now you'll have a digital image that looks like the after version. So it's just, I don't know, I get too excited about this, but it's what I do. And I'm so thrilled that my clients have something now in this quality instead of the degraded photo that is sitting in front of them when they have the print. Okay, so I'm going to give you some before and after photos of my clients' photo collection so you can sort of see the whole flow of what I do from the clients that I do work with. So similar to what I showed you before, here's a before picture that we just centralized all the boxes and albums and envelopes, and this is what it might look like. And you've seen this slide already, but this is what we got to go to the scanner. Oh, and let me mention, sorry, I had a random thought that I forgot to share with you before. So photos, you might wonder how many photos, Bonnie, are in those boxes? Well, I can give you a rule of thumb. Those are shoe boxes. Typically, shoe boxes are 10 to 12 inches in length. And if you think about a pile of photos, 1 inch is 100 photos. So in these boxes, let's say there were 10 inches long, there's about 8,000 photos in this collection of this client that I work with. So it just gives you sort of general feel of how many photos you have and how many you eventually have that you're going to be scanning. So this is the mess. I say mess, it was a mess, and now it's really all figured out because you played detective, you sorted them, you edited them, and you have a great filing system and a way to scan them. So I started with 14,000 pictures for this client, and we're now down to the 8,000 that are finally scanned. So we take those 8 boxes that I just showed you, and you can put them on an external hard drive or a flash drive now that technology can give us terabyte of storage space on a little thumb drive. So if you think about that, all those boxes, and now you can hold it in your palm of your hand. It's awesome. And think about this. Once again, let's, for instance, for conversation's sake, you have 3 children. Well, you can make a flash drive for each of your children and for you. So you have backups right away, and we'll talk about backups in a little bit, but that's the end result of a collection that you curated. And then I put all of these photos, I take them out of those green plastic boxes because those were just my sorting boxes for work in process. And now these are archival boxes because we don't want any further degradation to happen to your photos. We don't want them to, just furtherly degrade. So these are boxes. And as you can see, I have like dividing, I made nice looking dividers so that each year, so that if you needed to go back and find a photo, it's all organized just like it is on the flash drive. Okay, hope you're still with me. Lots of information, but I want to now share with you step 6 is to tell your family story. If you followed all the previous steps I talked about, you have printed photos in nice boxes, you have scanned on your computer and or on an external hard drive, and how happy would this make you feel? Because to me, a curated collection is a gift that keeps on giving. It's a gift to you and a gift to your kids and grandkids and future generations. So now, all of your photos that used to be just printed, we now have in digital format. So anything that you do today with a digital picture that you take with your phone, you can now do with your scanned collection. So I'm going to give you some specific ideas that might help you tell your story and have fun with those photos that you just scanned. Photo books. I'm going to guess maybe many of you have made a photo book with original digital photos. Maybe a trip that you took, you decided to make a photo book, or sometimes for someone's graduation, they want to do a photo book of a party or a wedding. So you could design and print a tangible photo book. And I highly suggest coming up with something tangible to do with your photo collection, because I think as human beings, our heart really connects with photos when it's something we can hold. Or let's say you have a family gathering and you have a photo book now that you can pass around with all of these old photos. It's awesome, and the stories and the conversations that generate are really, really awesome. So, and the beauty of it is in the olden days, if you wanted to make a scrapbook, but you wanted one for each of your children, you had to make tangible, original scrapbooks. Well, now what you can do is you can design one photo book and print as many copies as you want. So it's much more efficient and not as laborious as scrapbooks or photo albums used to be with printed photos. There are so many companies that do photo books, and what I highly suggest, there's not one in particular that I would suggest, because it depends on how you learn and how your format is and all that. They're very similar, but they're each different. So my suggestion is to don't try one book company and then another, because you'll have learning curves every step of the way. What I suggest is pick a photo book company, learn it, dive into it, and keep learning with it so that you're not overwhelmed with just so much new information. It's harder to learn. So that's one suggestion for making photo books. Another suggestion, and I have to give credit to a client of mine who gave me this idea. So we had all of her photos scanned, and she was trying to think of, what am I going to do with these printed photos? Her idea was she took like a hostess tray. So you can see this wooden tray, has a lip on it. And she would take a bunch of the printed photos and throw them in the tray and put them in her family room on an ottoman. And when her grandkids came over to visit, she would point them over to the tray and say, what do you think about those photos? Do you know anybody in those photos? And it became tradition that every time they came to Grandma and Grandpa's house, they'd run in and see what photos were there. She'd sometimes change them up. And so they could ask questions. She could tell them stories. And I thought, what a gift. And my favorite part of this that I came up with is, how many of our parents, when we went to touch a photo, say, don't touch it, you're going to get fingerprints all over it, right? I get it. I'm not criticizing our parents, but you didn't love them. You didn't hold them because you were told not to touch. Well, this client is telling her grandkids, touch them, love them, hug them, get your fingerprints on them. We have them scanned, we have them backed up, but have some fun with these photos. So I just think that is just a charming and effective and a gift right there. My last suggestion is something that I did with a client. a client hired me to work with his mom on their collection. He and I went to grammar school together, so I've known their story for a long time. And so I helped them curate their story through the photos. And he said, Bonnie, I would like a recording of my mom telling stories about some of the photos. Some of the stories I'll know, but maybe some of them I won't. So as we're going through the photos, and the client and I are working together every step of the way, she's not doing it all by herself and I'm not doing it by myself, we're doing it together. The stories are coming out. So I'm taking notes about what little stories that she's talking about on these photos. So when we were all done, I picked about 20 photos that I knew there were good stories, and I'd share the story, the photo with her, and I audio taped her. What did I audio tape with her? I used my phone, voice message. I didn't do anything fancy. I didn't get camera equipment. I didn't get anything high tech. I got my phone, put it in front of her, and she started talking about the photos. And if I knew there was more information behind the photo that I remember her telling me before and she was not remembering, I say, and Helene, what about the blue dress that you talked about? And then she'd add more to it. So the end result of this little dialogue, I had 20 1 to 3 minute snippets of video, because I took the digital photo with the audio, merged them together with iMovie, which is, if you have a Mac computer, everybody has iMovie. And now we have these little snippets of video. And my client took all 20 of those, invited hers. Finally, when the pandemic sort of calmed down a little bit and they felt comfortable, he had his kids, his siblings, his nieces and nephews, and his mom all come over, and they watched these videos on a big screen TV. And he said there was not a dry eye in the lot. Not that she was telling sad stories, but it was such an excitement that they had the photo scanned, and then they had mom's voice telling them the story. And like he had anticipated, he knew some of the stories and heard them many times, and some he had never heard before. So to me, to have your parents' voice telling a story is just a gift. So that's my last suggestion at this point of another way to help tell your story and make it shareable and enjoyable. So I want to give you one last sort of suggestion, is that you don't have to work alone on your photos. And I believe we all agree that doing things with others is more fun. Like taking a walk with a friend is more fun than walking by yourself. Working out with a buddy is more fun than working by yourself. Going on a trip with someone, not that there's anything wrong with doing something yourself, but to have a buddy, and especially an accountability buddy, could be really helpful. So think about, you don't have to do this alone. You maybe have a friend that has their own collection. You guys could work side by side. Maybe you have a sibling, maybe you have a child that could help you. Maybe your parent is still alive and you could have them work with you. So any way that you could try to do this with someone else, it'll be a team effort. It'll be more fun. There'll be some laughter, maybe some tears, because you're seeing pictures that might be bittersweet of people that are no longer on this planet. And then lastly, people like me. So that if you feel like you need a professional to help you do it, that's partly what we do. We can give you objectivity and accountability, and besides the expertise. But I'm just really wanting to frame it in a way that you don't have to do this all by yourself. And I want you to go down memory lane and have fun with it. So it's not just a little, it's not something on your to-do list to like do your photos and check it off. I would like you to embrace the journey of looking at your photos and curating them, because it's just a gift to yourself that you're reconnecting with your photographic history. And take the effort one step at a time and enjoy the treasure journey. So that said, I want to give you a challenge. And my favorite adage here is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And to me, that's a fabulous analogy for a photo collection, because you might think about, you have this mountain of photos and I don't know how to climb a mountain. Well, you don't need to know how to climb a mountain. You're going to be doing one step at a time and not doing it overnight. So what I would suggest, my challenge to you today, is set one small goal for yourself as you're, driving home today or driving somewhere else or making dinner, whatever, just sort of percolate with all that I shared with you today and come up with one small step. And it might just be getting the tools together, or it might be getting your photos centralized. Don't feel like you have to do everything. One small step, maybe even mark it on your calendar, schedule it with yourself. And just keep in mind to be realistic, because if you're dealing with a lifetime of photos, it took a lifetime to get those photos together. And so it's going to take you quite a bit of time to accomplish what you eventually want to do, to take small, manageable steps. And to me, as I already mentioned, a curated photo collection is the gift that keeps on giving to you, your kids, and future generations. So one step at a time, and that's the best way, the best process to do it. So I'm ready for questions. So I will stop sharing my screen after I say one more thing, ladies and gentlemen. This is actually my business card that I just enlarged for the screen so you can have all the information if you wish. But this is the back of my business card. You might know who this little girl is. It's me on my dad's shoulders. And he's been gone for over 40 years. So I have not had him in my life for a long, long time. But to think I take him to work with me every day with this little picture just expresses my heart. So once again, I'm using a photo from my family's collection in this way that gives me joy. So be creative, everybody. You'll come up with your own ways to share your photos once you curate them. Okay.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mary Pat. Yes.
My cousin and I are organizing some photos, probably for just this purpose. We're doing some for genealogy purposes, so we're doing it by history. One family member, unfortunately, sent us some pictures, really, really old ones, but didn't pack them well. She just put them in an envelope. Several of them are damaged. They're either bent or they're torn because they're very, very old. These are from my great-grandfather and great-grandmother. Now, I don't even want to touch them to try and even scan them. Should they be professionally put together first, or how do I approach saving these or fixing them?
Well, ultimately, the best way to have them fixed is not to be physically fixed, like tried to glue together or tape them together. The best thing is to have them scanned, and then you can have them restored digitally. And I'm just make this note. I can include with Sydney's email that she'll send you. I can give you a resource of an online company for retouching and bring something back to life. You'd have to have it scanned, but you could go locally to have it scanned, and then you can have it restored and repaired.
Obviously, it would be, done professionally, because neither of us have any, experience with this, and we don't even want to touch it to try to even, try to unbend it. So that's why I wanted to ask, but we wanted to be able to include it with our collection. So that's terrific restoration and what to do with those pictures.
Got it. Sounds good. Okay, Elizabeth has her hand up. Let's go, Elizabeth.
Yeah. Hi, thank you so much. This has been great. I have a question for you. We've got a big range of types of photos, but one of the sets that we have a lot of are 8x10s that are in albums, kind of in an order. What's your suggestion for that part of the collection? I mean, still scan them or keep them in the albums? What to do with, and then we have tons of photos in albums as well, and loose photos.
Okay. So yeah, so you have the typical collection. I don't want to say the word typical, but it's a variety, right? Yeah. I totally get it. So 2 answers to your album question. many of you may have albums like from a wedding or a bar bat mitzvah where you had the professional photographer make an album so that actually the picture is actually the page of the album.
Oh,
And
we
that's what
have
made
that
me think
too.
of- made me think of the 8x10 especially. So those can be scanned just like anything else. If you, I'm going to give you this visual. There's two kinds of scanners. There are flatbed scanners. So like back in the old days where you Xerox something and you know, lift a lid and you
Yeah.
put something flat on the paper and then you Xerox it. That's a
Right.
flatbed scan. And then with loose pictures, we have photos that are more like photocopiers where you like put the photo in, so they need to be loose. So either way, whatever you have, whether in an album where you can't take it out of the album because it is the album, you can still have them scanned. Then if you have albums that you made yourself, the easiest ones to help with are the ones that are pockets where you can take the pictures out of the pockets. But I'm going to venture to guess that many of you have what we used to call the sticky magnetic albums. And they're sticky and they're magnetic, and they are in sort of two ends of the spectrum condition wise now. Some of them are, you could hold it up and shake it and the pictures just fall out because everything dried up, and that's awesome. Then there are other ones where that glue is hanging on to their photos for dear life and you cannot get those pictures off if you tried. So once again, those are the kind of albums, if they're sticky and that they're stuck to the album, that you take to a scanning and they can do a flatbed scan. Something in the middle might be that you can use dental floss. That's one of the tools that I sometimes use, believe it or not, is you have to sort of put dental floss at the corner of a picture that's on a sticky, and you could sort of loosen it a little bit, or even a scalpel, like an icing. My daughter used to be a pastry chef, and so I have like icing spatulas, and those are really nice to sort of help. So just little ways to try to get pictures out of an album. And one more thing I'll say, Elizabeth, and you may want to have to clarify anything, is that if you have writing on the album in the pages, you don't want to take an album apart without capturing that information, because then you're disconnecting the pictures with the, maybe your mom, you know, very detail oriented and put dates or places or people. So just be careful. That's one thing you want to be careful about with the albums.
Okay, so your suggestion is that even if you have albums that you put together, we have a lot of ones that had the little pockets for the regular size photos, and we have those with dates on the inside, you know, 1980 to 82 or whatever it is. But your suggestion is take them out and put them through this same process.
Exactly.
Don't keep them in the albums.
No, because they can't be scanned if they're in the albums,
Right.
because they'll have And the good news in my mind is that if you've already put it in an album, you've already done one edit, right? You didn't put the whole 36 pictures from a roll of film and throw them in the album, most likely. You probably put, so you've already sort of done one part of that editing, but you know, see if you can edit it further, but put them in, like I say, in the filing system, you might say album A, and it's 1972 to 1973. And album B, you can even keep them together if you want to keep them together, but yes, take them out so you can have them scanned.
Okay, thank you.
Karen.
So I have my grandmother's photos, my mother's photos, and my own photos to deal with. And starting with the grandmother's photos. And I have a number of very old photos that are in frames. And I was thinking what I would be doing was taking them out of the frames, scanning them if I choose to do so, and then putting them into like a photo safe envelope, or should I just leave them in the frames, which I don't want to do because it takes a lot of room.
Yes, in general, what I think most people's goal is, we want to take the footprint of our photo collection and reduce it. So to me, a great first step, and this might be maybe your goal, is take all the pictures out of the frames. Okay. And then you have this little stack of photos instead of this big stack of frames. Obviously, if you plan on reframing any of them, you know, keep track of that. But sometimes people unframe everything, have them scanned, and then they print of like the top 2 pictures that were just so sentimental. but they were able to print new copies because they were much better condition and color wise. And then they
Right.
can frame those.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. And then lastly, I also have a huge number of slides, which I also, there's a bunch that are just like people, I have no idea who they are. I'm just going to toss those. But I'm assuming we're going through the same process here where we're sorting them first and maybe deciding if there's anything we want to make a print out of. I'm assuming somebody can take those and make a digital print and we don't have to go through the paper process.
Even better yet, you can have a slide scanned,
You're right.
right? So it can be scanned just like a print. It's a different kind of equipment.
Right, but you won't be able, if you scan a slide, you're not going to see much in it. You kind of have to, I guess, yeah, you put the light through it and make a picture out of it. So, okay.
Right. It is a challenge because they're really little, and so they're hard to see. And if you don't have a projector,
I got
to look
two.
Well, and what I wanted to say is because I have a projector and it was acting up the other day and I needed one. And so I have a Facebook group of my colleagues and I threw out the question, hey, does anybody in the Chicago area have a Kodak 360? Because I would like to borrow one. And somebody suggested try the library because I live in Highland Park. And sure enough,
Yes, so do I.
I love it. And I was like, I didn't even think about that. So you could check out a projector from the library. So different ways to get to the finish line. But yes, slides are great. And they're oftentimes, Karen, in better condition than prints. They sometimes just don't discolor. So
yeah, and I have a lot of black and white ones too. I also wanted to thank you. A long time ago, you'd given me the recommendation to use, and I forget the name of them up in Milwaukee, but they're associated with the Forever, so that I can store all my digital stuff online. And I really liked working with them. And I've also found it to be very helpful to share it with my family without having to make separate copies of things. I can just say, here they are, and then I can add things and people can, and I don't have to make like a whole other presentation for them. I just add it and they're there.
Yeah, Molly and Ann up in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Awesome. Love to hear it, Karen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sydney, are there any questions in the chat or does anybody else want to unmute and ask live?
Well, can I just ask you to expand on that? That is really wonderful. That our photos can be scanned and then put on is it a cloud system? And then is that what it is?
Yeah. Yes, and there's different companies. There are different companies. I'm not going to promote specifically because it depends on each family, what their needs are and what their desires are. But yes, there are companies where it's a subscription. Typically, she mentioned Forever, which is a slight different format, but it's a place where you can post your photos. You can password protect them. So it's not like putting them up on Facebook or somewhere where anybody can see them. Depends on your privacy preferences, but it's something that you can do. And then you send people a link and they can go and look at the galleries and you can even give them the download possibilities if you feel like you have siblings or cousins that you want to be able to provide. So yes, it's beyond your cloud-based computer and that they're more shareable. And, what I suggest to people, depending on your family setup or your preferences or priorities, we want to future-proof your collection to the best of our abilities with technology. And by having a cloud-based system, technology is on our side that we can share it and make it more available and more backed up. And actually, I didn't mention anything about backup. My apologies. Let's say you scan your photos. Make sure you keep backups of those photos of the scans. So if you have a safety deposit box, at the bank, take a flash drive and put it in there so that if anything should happen to your computer, you have a backup. A cloud-based system is a backup. You can give one to your kids right then and there. It's a backup. So backup is extra precious for these as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bonnie, we do have a couple questions in the chat. Phil's question is, when photos are scanned, does it cost more for color correction?
So the visual that I gave you of that cheerleader, the before and the after, that's the standard scanning process. I did not pay extra for it. I mean, I pick very high standards scanning company so that I know I'm going to get that, but it's their standard rate.
Okay. And so would you recommend, even going back to one of the earlier questions, get everything scanned, kind of see how they look, and then there's other people who are able to restore something later if you don't feel like it's still good enough quality, or would they do that kind of all in the one same process?
So good question. To me, the scanning process really color corrects. That's basically what it does, and the lightness and darkness, the exposure. It does not repair. It does not, like if there's a crease or even specks of dust, let's say on the picture, it's not going to correct those. That goes more to what Mary Pat was asking about, where it's more repair or restoration. So those are sort of two separate services. The color correction is all included in the scanning. And then the other one is really just more for individual photos that we know are damaged, or, you know, if there's a picture that you need some Photoshop, like let's say you have two pictures and somebody was missing from one, you could literally have the face from one picture Photoshopped into another. And the company that I'm going to share with you can do that too. I mean, it's magic. It's, you know, not the original photo really, because you're merging two, but if you want that group photo to have all the players in it, you can do it.
All right. Another question is, are there online photo organizers that let you add descriptions to the albums and the photos?
I'm not sure what an online photo organizer reference is.
I'm not sure. It was a direct
I
message.
want to answer that question because that's helpful.
I have one other question. Let me see if Teresa adds any additional information. Oh, she says like SmugMug or Apple Photos. I guess, can you add descriptions?
Yes, the answer is yes. So to me, the visual is you have a printed photo and you're looking at it, right? And you're like, what is this? Well, you flip the photo over and thank goodness mom wrote on it, you know, Bonnie's 6th birthday party, you know, 1965. Well, what we do is we take the scanned image and we take what's ever written on the back of the photo and we put it in the description. And also I do facial recognition for my clients' photos so that we can identify every person in the photos, which adds to the information. So yes, so that SmugMug or Apple Photos on your phone. There's different ways to do it even on a PC platform. That's the idea, is you want the information to be with the photo so that when somebody looks at it in 50 years and you're not here to tell them what that photo is all about, we've captured this story and it's visible and viewable and you can see it.
Okay, great. One last question that I see is, and I remember you mentioning, you gave me such permission to throw photos away. Like I just felt like such sacrilege. But is there anything special you should do? Are they recyclable? Do you just put them in your regular trash?
Yes, they're not recyclable because they're on photo paper, which is not just regular paper. So yes, I would say in the regular trash. If you're worried about, some people are very worried about privacy, you could basically shred them, you know, if you want to bring them to a shredder, so that the image is gone. But yeah, just regular garbage. Or you could, as I tell people, I could wallpaper a small bathroom with what I'm about to throw away.
Sure.
Or collage, right?
Yeah, definitely some art projects.
Right.
All right. Does anyone else have any last questions? Feel free to raise your hand or drop something in the chat. Otherwise, I just want to thank Bonnie so much. Oh, wait, Margaret's raising her hand.
Hey, Margaret.
Good to see you, Bonnie.
Good to see you.
I needed to scan photos last week, right? And I asked Walgreens, then I asked my UPS store. So the UPS store said, come on over, we'll put them through the Xerox machines, whatever, right? in the future, should I have looked under scanning in Chicago? What is the name of these companies that do that? Yeah, and there aren't that many photo stores left anymore.
Right, there aren't. So there are 4 in the Chicago area that, and I'm happy to give them all to Sydney. Can I give them all to you when I email you?
Yeah, we'll include them in the email.
Yeah, it's photo scanning. All you need to do is photo scanning. And there's 2 in Chicago. Actually, one's in Skokie now, they moved, and 1 in Chicago, 1 in Winnetka, Hubbard Woods, and the place that I use, which is out in Vernon Hills. So I'll give you all those
appreciate
addresses,
that.
and they all do full service. And we didn't talk about this, but if you guys have any videotapes or movies, all these are audio tapes, like I have audio tapes, reel to reel. All these places typically convert those as well into digital formats that you can now put on your computer and enjoy and keep them safe.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Yeah, we'll definitely include those in the email with all of the other helpful tips and tricks and the link to the recording so you can come back to it. But if nobody else has any other questions, I just want to thank Bonnie so much. This is always the second time I've heard it, and it's just as inspiring the second time around. So save the recording and you can go back and look at it. But yes, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. I'm glad that we were all able to come together today, and we look forward to seeing you at another program in the near future.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you, Sydney. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.